In a recent chapter of One Piece, Luffy and his crew managed to safely escape Egghead Island with the help of the Iron Giant Emeth. But the way he helped them escape was something I found to be very interesting and somewhat revealing. Emeth took out a rope that was tied into a knot, pulled on it, and with the undoing of the knot, out came a burst of Joyboy's Conqueror's Haki. This is a concept we have seen before. During the time skip when Nami trained on Witheria, the scientist Haradas demonstrated that wind can be stored in a special kind of knot, and with each knot undone, a gust of wind would come out. Why I find this to be so interesting is that it opens the door for something that could have profound implications on Oda's story. We've seen Haki be imbued into objects before. Armament Haki imbued on the arrows of Kuja warriors. Beckman pointing a gun at Kizaru implies that bullets can be imbued in the same way. So this got me thinking. We've seen Armament Haki and Conqueror's Haki imbued into things, so what about Observation Haki? Let's say someone, Joyboy for example, had incredibly powerful Observation Haki, Future Sight Observation Haki. If so, could a vision of the future be imbued into a rope the same way Conqueror's Haki was? Could this be a part of the reason Roger thought he was too early when arriving at Laugh Tale? Is there one piece of rope awaiting us on that final island? But I'm getting ahead of myself. Welcome to the Hidden Island, and today we are going to untangle the mysteries of Haki and perhaps even Joyboy himself. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the video, and without further ado, let's get into it. If you want to become a big player in the One Piece world, you pretty much have two ways to grow stronger. You either find a Devil Fruit power, preferably one that isn't Kinemon's, or you train up your Haki. Both are easier said than done. Devil Fruits, especially good ones, are hard to come by, and training up your Haki takes a lot of time and intense work ethic. Conqueror's Haki, in the ideal case, is an inborn trait and even then needs to be trained in order to access it efficiently. What's crazy about Haki is that it wasn't formally introduced until about halfway into the story. That means over 500 chapters where Haki was not a major element of the fights, nor in the plot. And yet, despite being introduced so late, it can be argued that Haki is the primary power system of One Piece, while Devil Fruits are the secondary system. Weird, right? You must be thinking, no way that's true. Devil Fruits are the core of the story. They were there ever since Chapter 1. They have been a main identifier with One Piece as a shonen and a central focus in a majority of the fights. And yes, that's correct, but it doesn't change the fact that Haki is simply more important for a fighter in the One Piece world. It's more important as a system within the realm of combat. Haki is akin to a ki or chakra system, while Devil Fruits are more akin to something like stands or jutsu. The point remains that you need Haki to succeed in the Grand Line. Everybody who's anybody in the Grand Line has access to Haki. You can become a top-tier fighter on Haki alone. In fact, the people that sit at the very top of the pyramid, people like Roger and Garp, use nothing but Haki. But it's next to impossible to do the same with nothing but a Devil Fruit power, which is why even those with the strongest Devil Fruits go out of their way to learn Haki usage. Not only that, but it's universal. Everyone can do it, but not everyone has a Devil Fruit. When you look at the top 4 fighters of the Straw Hat Pirates, only one of them is a Devil Fruit user, while the rest rely on Haki to get by. Oftentimes, Devil Fruits aren't even ideal for fighting, and serve better as plot devices like Brulee's Mirror World, Brook's Resurrective Power, Kinemon and Bonclay's Disguises, Pudding's Memory abilities, Sugar's Toy ability, Vegapunk's Massive Brain, etc. This is what I mean by secondary. If you want to survive the Grand Line, Devil Fruits are not necessary, while Haki is absolutely necessary. Granted, ideally you would have both, but you get my point. Of course, despite not being introduced, Haki has been a present element as far back as Chapter 1, even if Oda didn't plan it to be so at the time, and we saw echoes of this ability in Skypiea, Sabaody, and Marineford. It was there, but also not there at the same time. We didn't really see it or understand it, and it wasn't given enough focus to qualify it as a separate power system yet. But since then, it has been given arguably the most focus, and being that it was taught to us and Luffy by a member of the Pirate King's crew, it's very likely that Haki is now meant to be a core part of the narrative. And if that's the case, it only makes sense that we should get an explanation for what's actually going on with this ability. So, what is actually going on? What is Haki? Haki can be translated a few ways. It means ambition, aspiration, drive, vigor, domineering spirit, and most notably, will. Will is a prominent and recurring factor in the One Piece story, the desires and dreams a person wishes to act on, and by extension, the willpower, the drive, or inner strength a person has to achieve those desires. It's a force ever present in the world, and more importantly, a force which Haki manages to materialize and weaponize. But it's not a purely metaphysical internal power. It's not simply this invisible imaginary force that motivates people. The willpower we describe as Haki is a very tangible thing. So what gives? The way I see it, Haki is effectively a form of energy. Even in our universe, energy can't be directly observed, with light being the only exception to that rule, but most energy is invisible. However, that doesn't mean it isn't there. In fact, we know it's there because we can observe the effects that energy has on other things, such as movement, heat, sound, etc. Just like how you can't directly see a lot of the energy in the universe, you can't see Haki, but you can observe its effects. You can interact with and utilize Haki even if it's invisible. So to summarize, Haki is a type of energy, more specifically, a spiritual energy, not so different from Ki, for example. Armament Haki is what happens when you materialize your spiritual energy or will and coat yourself in it like a suit of armor. Observation Haki is what happens when you observe the spiritual energy or will of others, and Future Sight is effectively reading the intent of that will in order to predict the future. This is probably why Shanks had to read a dossier on Kid before using his Future Sight, because he needed to understand Kid's personality before being able to read his intentions, but that's just my hypothesis. Conqueror's Haki is what happens when you impose your will directly onto others, and thus those with a weaker will or spirit can't maintain consciousness as their very being is completely overpowered. This kind of thing extends to devil fruits. In fact, Haki and devil fruits have a very interwoven relationship, and it's no surprise to me because both seem to be very highly related to the concepts of spirit and will, and especially the inheritance of that will. Devil fruits in particular embodying that last part. Devil fruits, or at the very least, Zoan fruits, are stated to have a will of their own, and awakening Zoan type powers runs the risk of the user's will being overpowered by the will of the fruit, and generally, I think it's safe to say that devil fruits don't change the will of the user in any way. In the worst case scenario, they simply overpower it with their own will. Logias, for example, change the physical body of the user into an element, but they don't alter their will. If Crocodile, for example, turns into sand, he doesn't suddenly become mentally like sand. He doesn't lose his identity as Crocodile among the grains of sand in the desert. He retains who he is. Crocodile's spirit remains despite his physical form changing. Thus, he can control and reform himself as he pleases. He's both part of the sand and not part of the sand at the same time, because not every grain of sand in the desert suddenly becomes Crocodile once he turns into sand, just like Crocodile doesn't instantly become the entire desert. Some of it is Crocodile, some of it retains the essence of Crocodile within, and therefore he can come and go between those forms. And this explains why Haki can be used to damage Devil Fruit users and Logias specifically, because when you punch Crocodile or Smoker or Ace with Haki, you aren't only punching their physical form. You are punching their spirit directly. The will contained within their transformation, or as Blackbeard puts it, the true body of the user, is being stricken directly by the will of the attacker. This is probably why the Yami Yami fruit works the way it does. Nothing can escape a black hole, including the wills of others, and as we've established, will and Haki and these things are a physical thing to some degree, and thus by making direct contact with his darkness fruit, he's able to grab hold of not only your physical body, but your spiritual body as well. Likewise, I don't think it's a stretch to say that sea stone works the way it does because it contains the will or spirit of the sea itself, and so by making contact with a devil fruit user, the will of the sea bypasses and nullifies devil fruit powers by interacting directly with the user's spirit. All this is to say that Haki is almost certainly a type of spiritual energy, one that can be physically accessed and also one that can be suppressed by greater energies, spirits, or wills just like it. And so, all forms of this spiritual energy can logically be imbued onto other things, observation Haki included. It's far from confirmed, but I think we may have already gotten an example of this happening before. During the Battle of Marineford, Luffy gets into a small fight with Mihawk. During that fight, there's a very odd moment, at least to me, where Mihawk is about to cut Luffy's arms off, and just before he does, Luffy sees a vision of this happening and redirects his attack to avoid it. But at this point, Luffy does not know how to use Future Sight at all. When he does learn how to use Future Sight later in the story, it never calls back to this moment as an example of Luffy tapping into it accidentally. So why did it happen here but nowhere else, and why was it not emphasized as important, at least from Luffy's perspective? Well, notice how just before Luffy saw that vision, we get a close-up panel of Mihawk's eyes, almost as if he was projecting something with that stare. I read this as observation Haki projection. I personally think what actually went down here is that Mihawk used his observation Haki to send Luffy a vision of what would happen if he followed through with his attack. If this turns out to be true, then it's pretty much a confirmation that just like Conquerors and Armament, observation Haki can be projected outward and onto other people or things, and this means that Joyboy doing so is not out of the question, but is in fact a very real possibility. Let's get back to the rope stuff. In a world full of sailors and pirates, rope is an incredibly important tool. It was that way in the real world during the golden age of piracy. Ropes were used as belts or to rig ships, secure sails, hold down other objects, tie ships to port, sometimes swing from ship to ship when raiding, and even used by the government as a means of execution, since most pirates, especially in England, were executed by hanging. This goes for knots as well. Sailors need to know a ton of different kinds of knots, because the way a rope is tied is very important, and various knots have various purposes. Some were tied with the intention of bearing a lot of pressure. Some were tied with the intention of being untied very quickly and easily in emergencies. Some knots are even meant to tie one rope to another rope. Just look up on Google how many different kinds of knots there are and you'll see what I mean. Rope and knot tying was critical in the world of pirates and sailors, and so it's no surprise that Oda would make this an important element in his story. Just look at Paulie, for example, an incredibly talented shipwright from Water 7 who uses rope as a core part of his fighting style. It's likewise no surprise that Joyboy, the first pirate in history, was well versed on this subject. But as always, the inspirations that Oda pulls from don't stop there. As I've mentioned many times on this channel before, Oda takes heavy influence from many cultures around the world, and a major one that he likes to reference is Buddhism, being that it's the predominant religion in Japan alongside Shintoism. In Buddhism, there is a concept known as the Sunku. I probably butcher the pronunciation, please forgive me, but the Sunku is also known as a blessed protection cord. It's a string that is tied into a knot meant to be worn as a bracelet. They are tied with specific types of knots and blessed by a Buddhist Lama. This cord, now thought to be invested with spiritual power, meant to protect the wearer from harm. Some cords have one knot, and others can have as many as 5. Each knot is given a specific purpose. A scorpion knot, for example, is meant to protect from evil spirits, while another knot may be used to prolong a person's life. Traditionally, a lama would tie the knot, blow into it, say a couple mantras, and bless the cord. Often, and most importantly to our discussion, These protection cords are meant to be a way for your teacher to remain with you and protect you even after they are long gone. When I learned this, it struck me as significant because it's almost word for word what Joyboy tells Emeth when he gives him the rope. Quote, "I've tied a knot of the greatest of Haki and locked it inside your body. You're going to keep on living long after I'm dead. There will come a day when I can't help you anymore. When the time is right, when you're in danger, untie that knot and I'll save you all the way from the past." And Emeth responds, "I'm glad, thank you." Then it's like, you're here with me even after you're dead. It's clear to me that Oda took note from the blessed protection cords of Buddhism here. He took this concept and mixed it with the rope and knot tying of the pirate and marine world. Joyboy imbued his Haki, his spiritual energy, his will, into a knot that he tied and left it with Emeth in order to protect him from evil long after he's dead. He effectively blessed a rope with Haki, and he described this in such a casual manner that I'd be surprised if this was the only time he's ever done such a thing. Let's touch on Conqueror's Haki again for a second, because there's another cool connection we can make between this and the knot Joyboy tied. Joyboy is the first pirate, as we said. He is likely considered the first ever king of the pirates. Joyboy seems to possess an incredible amount of Conqueror's Haki, so much that even the Gorosei can't stand being in its presence. Conqueror's Haki is also known as the Haki of the Supreme King. Well, what or who exactly is the Supreme King? This is never made clear, but I'd assume that the Supreme King is a title given to a person who possesses the qualities to stand above other men and kings alike. It's the reason that Conqueror's Haki is a 1 in a million ability. Only very special people possess the disposition of a conqueror, and so it's also possible that the true Supreme King is the one who manages to stand above all the other conquerors, all the other Supreme Kings, the one who becomes King of the Pirates. Don Chinjiao explains this in a very straightforward way. There are countless souls on the seas ahead with the quality of a king. That title is decided by them. Only he who stands atop those supreme kings can be called King of the Pirates. In other words, the king of all the seas, a supreme king in the truest sense, is an individual who not only possesses the quality of a king, aka Conqueror's Haki, but also the dominance of a king, the ability to surpass all the others who also share those kingly qualities. That is what a pirate king is, at least according to Don Chinjiao. And I would take his word for it. That throne in Marishwa, the one that Imu's sitting on, suspiciously looks like it was made for the Don. That's all I'm gonna say. Not really. So when we see how much Conqueror's Haki Joyboy tucked away into that rope, it shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone that he was the first ever pirate king. And it almost comes full circle in a way, because the undoing of the knot in that rope is what saves the future pirate king and the second coming of Joyboy, Monkey D. Luffy. This, in a weird kind of way, shares similarities with the ancient Greek legend of the Gordian knot. Back during the time of Alexander the Great, one of the most successful conquerors in history, there was a highly intricate and complex knot tied to an ox cart in the city of Gordium. It was said that whoever could untie that knot would be destined to conquer all of Asia. Alexander was challenged to untie it, and being Alexander, instead of trying to actually untie it, he cut through it with his sword. Afterward, he would go on to do exactly what was predicted, conquering large portions of land in mainland Asia. Is it a direct reference on Oda's part? I don't think so. But since we know that Oda has already filled his story with references to legends of antiquity, especially Greek legends, I wouldn't be surprised if this too came up in his research. Either way, the connections between ropes, knots, spiritual energy, destiny, and conquerors are already there both in the story and in our reality. But what does this mean for the future of the story? If it's possible to store Haki within a knot, if the Pirate King is the one who can stand above all the other conquerors, and if Joyboy was the first one to do these things with the greatest spirit of a conqueror, then could it be that we haven't seen the last of this rope idea? Is there a Gordian knot awaiting us on Laugh-Tale, one that only someone with the right abilities or the right disposition can untie? And if there is, what's contained within the rope? If you take a look at the One Piece logo, you may notice something. That wrapping around and underlining the title is a rope. Even more striking is that the Straw Hat Jolly Roger is biting that rope. I never thought about it much before, but it's kinda odd to see the Jolly Roger doing this, the skull biting on a rope. We never see it like this anywhere else but in the One Piece logo itself. And considering Joyboy was the first pirate, probably the first person to fly a Jolly Roger, this connection between the Jolly Roger and the rope seems to be significant to me. But what if I told you that this rope is there on the logo for a reason? What if I told you that the idea of a rope and the One Piece treasure are connected in a significant way? That it's not just there to underline the word One Piece, but may in some way be related to the One Piece treasure itself. I've spoken about it before, but in Japanese, the One Piece treasure is often referred to as Hitotsunagi no Daihiho, or while translated, the Great Hitotsunagi Treasure. More specifically, in the manga that phrase is written alongside the term One Piece, with the words One Piece being written in little furigana characters above the phrase. We miss this context completely in English, and to us, this treasure is only known as the One Piece. So, what does the term Hitotsunagi mean? We now run into another problem. Oda chooses to write this term in hiragana rather than kanji, a habit he loves to do in order to obscure the true meaning of the word. By not using kanji characters, it's difficult to determine the exact meaning because of the way Japanese works, because the words, when unspecified, can have multiple meanings while sounding identical. Kanji is used to differentiate those meanings, and since we lack kanji, we lack the exact meaning. The word hitotsunagi can be translated thusly 3 ways. Number 1, in one piece. That's fair enough, straightforward. Number 2, one sea at peace. Fair enough. Both of these are pretty similar to each other, but then you get to the third translation, which is a massive curveball by comparison. The third possible translation of Hitotsunagi is the rope linking all men. When I realized this, a light bulb kind of went off in my head because not only is there a rope in the One Piece logo, but the term Hitotsunagi contains a reference to rope as well, in direct reference to the One Piece treasure. So what I need to ask you now is there a possibility that a rope with a knot, just like the one Emeth had, is waiting for the Strawhats at Laugh Tale? Is one piece of rope the One Piece treasure? And when undone, what exactly is released from inside the rope? Let's walk through these questions one at a time. Is there another rope on Laugh Tale? I think it would be weird to introduce this rope concept with Emeth and then never bring it back up again. Clearly, if Haki can be stored in special knots for over 800 years, then in an effort to preserve things from the Void Century, it probably would have benefited Joyboy to do this more than just once. And since the only one to have this rope was Emeth, a relic of the Void Century, then it's likely to me that there is at least another one of these on Laugh Tale, presumably the last island remaining to preserve anything else from the Void Century, apart from the poneglyphs, I guess. Is this rope the One Piece? This one I don't feel too confident on. If the One Piece is a rope with something like Haki contained inside, this raises a couple problems. First off, I find it hard to believe that the rope is the treasure since we've already seen one just like it in Egghead. I don't think Oda would spoil the One Piece in this way. It would have to be something we haven't already seen in order to have any impact. However, if the rope is not the treasure, but simply the metaphorical chest the treasure is stored in, that would make it more believable to me, in which case I could understand this being the first thing we see when we're supposed to see the One Piece, but then the actual treasure comes out once you undo the knot, right? Second, if Roger already got there and saw the One Piece treasure, then that means he likely already undid the rope and released whatever was stored in it. That would leave nothing for the Straw Hats to find when they got there, which we know is not going to happen. However, if there was something preventing Roger from undoing the rope, let's say for example the rope was too large or too complex or protected by some mechanism that required Joyboy's cartoon powers to open it, then it's possible he didn't undo the knot during his visit. But then, what exactly did Roger see, and why did he laugh? Sure, if I spent my life looking for this incredible treasure and found nothing but a string in a box like that one SpongeBob episode, I'd probably find that pretty funny, but that doesn't feel like a sufficient enough explanation to me. It could be that there was a final poneglyph on Laugh-Tale. In fact, I'm assuming there is at least one poneglyph on Laugh-Tale, accompanying the piece of rope, explaining Joyboy's role in the Void Century, the purpose of the rope itself, and that only a certain individual would be able to untie it. And this could be what Roger saw. Maybe it was the absurdity of the treasure right in front of them and the act of being too early to do anything with it that made the crew laugh, but that's just my way of filling in the blanks. Either way, while I'm not convinced a piece of rope is the One Piece treasure, I do think there will be some kind of rope like this on Laugh-Tale, whether or not it's the treasure we're waiting for. Plus, there's a non-zero chance that the actual One Piece treasure is stored within the rope, but I'll get to that in a second. So what is stored within the rope? This is kind of a bullshit question because that's kind of like asking what is the One Piece in this case, but let's just play around with this idea. So let's go with the idea that this rope is effectively a treasure chest within which the One Piece is held. If this is true, there are so many potential options for what could be inside. Let's go over them. As we spent a lot of the first half of this video discussing, the knots tied on these ropes can be used to store things, and Haki seems to be a likely choice. If Conqueror's Haki can be stored within, and Armament Haki can also be stored in objects or coded onto objects, then it stands to reason that Observation Haki can also be stored inside. But the type of Observation Haki I'm thinking of is Future Sight. What are the odds that Joyboy had such powerful Observation Haki that he could see well into the future? And if he could, is there a chance that he took this Haki vision of the future and stored it within a rope, just like he did with his Conqueror's Haki? If so, this could mean a couple things. One, it would allow Joyboy to indirectly communicate with whoever arrives on Laugh-Tale, and two, it would give an explanation for why certain beings like the Sea Kings could know when certain important events would take place far in advance, for example, the birth of Poseidon or the other mysterious sovereign. It could explain how Roger knew he was too early because such a vision would show him that he is not the one who will bring the dawn. Lesser figures like Charlie are capable of doing future readings, so why not Joyboy himself? It wouldn't just be some random prophecy, it would be a vision of the future attained by already well-established mechanics within the story, made possible by the strongest and arguably most important character in the story. This is a prophecy setup I could get behind. In fact, I think it would actually be pretty cool if we got the Void Century flashback the same way the Strawhats do. They open up the rope and then they get a vision of the future, or maybe even what happened 800 years ago for real, like what actually happened. And as they see it, we're seeing it. And we both, us and the Straw Hats, get the revelations of the Void Century at the same time. I think that could be very, very cool. Alternatively, let's say that Future Sight Haki was not stored in the rope, but instead some kind of Conqueror's Haki like what we saw with Emeth. What would the purpose of this be? Well, according to Queen Orihime, Joyboy is the one who will lead all of the ancient weapons towards their true purpose. While many people out there seek the power of the ancient weapons and wish to use them for the wrong reasons, Joyboy will be the one to unify all three and use them for what they were originally created for. But how is this done? Does it perhaps take the will of a powerful conqueror, the true supreme king, to command these three weapons in such a way? If so, could there be Conqueror's Haki stored inside the rope that, when released, allows whoever untied the knot to command the ancient weapons? This may not even be Conqueror's Haki that does this, but maybe observation like what we were just talking about that informs us of the true purpose of the weapons. There's also observation Haki that's used to sense emotions, so maybe the ability to control or observe the emotions of the ancient weapons could come into play. Either way, such a thing being the key to fully utilizing the ancient weapons doesn't seem unlikely to me, and it's been supported in a more recent chapter when Sabo proposed that whoever finds the One Piece and becomes Pirate King may be the one to harness their power. Another idea, the voice of all things could be stored inside. Much like how the poneglyph spoke to Roger, maybe pulling the rope releases the voices of everything that was kept hidden away since the Void Century, so that not only certain special people can hear them, but all people can hear them. These voices that have been kept silent for 800 years until the promised day would suddenly become too loud to ignore, and the rope that links all men could be a very literal description of the treasure, being a rope that contains the voice of all things, a link between all that is living and non-living alike. And finally, I also want to propose the idea that it's not necessarily Haki stored inside this thing, but some kind of element or object. As we know, Haki isn't the only thing that can be stored in a knot. As we saw before, wind can also be stored inside. In which case, who's to say that only wind can be stored inside? It's possible that some kind of physical object is trapped within the rope in some kind of pocket rope dimension, and when untied, out pops the real treasure. And the thing keeping any random Joe from opening it would maybe be some kind of Haki placed on the rope, meaning you'd need strong enough Haki to metaphorically unlock this treasure chest or something only someone like Luffy or Shanks or Roger would be capable of. What kind of object is inside? I have no idea, and I think something like that is best left to the imagination, which kind of brings us back to square one. Even if the rope is there, which I believe it is, we still don't know what the actual One Piece treasure itself is. At most, the rope is only part of that treasure. What's actually inside the knot that Joyboy tied is completely up to Oda. But with this new information, we are possibly one step closer to understanding Joyboy and his mythical treasure. It's only a matter of time before we end up at Laugh Tale and find out for real. Thanks for watching this theory. Not as long as my other ones, but I really hope you enjoyed it nonetheless. I also want to take a quick second to apologize for my constant delays and missed promises when it has come to my upload schedule this year. Without getting too personal or detailed, I just gotta open up. I've had a lot going on at home, and those of you who have frequented my streams know that I've been in and out of hospitals all year with my dog who was seriously ill. Insurance didn't want to cover anything, doctors didn't know what was wrong, I had to foot the bill, do a ton of research, and lug my pup around from doctor to doctor, kind of like Law and Corazon. It really took a huge toll on me mentally, emotionally, and financially, probably one of the biggest in my life, and that made it very hard for me to sit down and work on something fun like One Piece videos. I just couldn't get into the mindset for it, really. This has been going on for over a year, and if you were wondering why my uploads became so sporadic and rare this year, that's why. This was a situation I was totally unprepared to deal with, and I kind of spent half of 2024 scrambling to pick up the pieces. But, thankfully, this month has finally brought a good reversal of fortune for me and my family. My dog's latest surgery seems to have worked after the third attempt, God willing, and for the first time in what feels like forever, we can breathe again. I finally feel ready to come back to YouTube with the same passion I used to have, and I really appreciate everyone's patience with me and hope that moving forward, I can continue to bring you guys the type of content you enjoy. Speaking of which, if you enjoyed today's video, please do me a huge favor and leave a like and subscribe to keep the music alive. What do you guys think about the rope idea? Does it have a chance to be true? What do you think might be inside another rope? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching this because I sure enjoyed putting it on. Until next time, have a great day, a good night, and a wonderful romance dawn. Oh, and by the way, Paulie is Joyboy.